I'm Zena Krogadal. Thanks for joining in with the American Dream Makers today. I am your host for today's show. Please, if you are watching this live stream, please like and share this. Get this out. Would appreciate it. If you haven't been a part of American Dream Makers Facebook page, please join the group. I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So Zena Krogadal, American Dream Makers. And today I have a very, very, very dear friend joining us today, and I can't wait to introduce him. But first, I am going to play my intro video. So here we go. I am back. Thank you for being here today. I am Zena Krogadal, your American Dream Makers host. Today, I get to have my friend Chris Wessen on the show. And Chris is a Marine veteran. He served our country. And after being in the service for 4 years, and he was deployed 3 times in Iraq while he was in active duty. After that, he was part of the Department of Defense and did some security contracts with them for about 5 years. And then after that, he came back home and went to Embry Riddle, got a degree in global security. Now he is an amazing mortgage lender. So he has fallen in love with what he does, and he has become the VA home loan specialist. And Chris loves the fact that he gets to work with so many veterans on a daily basis while being a resource to veterans and real estate agents that have questions regarding the VA home loan benefit. So without further ado, here is my friend, Chris Wessen. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Zena, how are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Doing great. It's good to see you.
Good to see you too. What's the weather like down there in your neck of the woods?
It's actually chilly today. I think it's a high of 58, although yesterday it was 75 maybe, but we're getting there. It's starting to warm up.
Yeah, yesterday was a little bit on the, I think you froze a little bit there.
I'm still here. Can you hear me? Am I good?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Okay, perfect. Yep. Perfect.
So how long have you been living in the Phoenix area, Cave Creek, Scottsdale? Your office is in Scottsdale, right?
Yeah, so our office is in Scottsdale. I live in Cave Creek, which for those that don't know is kind of as far northeast in Phoenix as you can go without getting out of Phoenix. But yeah, our office is in Scottsdale, and I've been in the Valley since 2013. As you kind of said, I was in the Marine Corps and I bounced around a lot, and I was stationed on the West Coast and just fell in love with it. So I was kind of here back and forth periodically between, time overseas, time living here. But 2013, I came back, and yeah, I've been here ever since, and I just love it. I don't see myself going anywhere else.
That's great. So you grew up in Alabama.
Yep.
And went to high school there.
Roll Tide. Yeah.
So what made you decide to join the Marines?
Well, it was really, I wasn't a big fan of school. I didn't like homework. I didn't like, studying. And I figured if I was going to try to go to college, I would flunk out and it'd be a waste of time. I wouldn't really take it serious. And my dad was in the military, and his dad was in the military, and, his brother was in the Navy. And so, a lot of the guys in my family had been in the military. So it was always kind of an option, not something like when I was little, I was like, oh, I want to join the military, but it was always kind of out there. And then a buddy of mine in high school who was a year ahead of me, he joined the Marines after he graduated, and it was going into my senior year. And after seeing him come back from boot camp and the way that he had changed and all this kind of stuff, I was like, okay, yeah, this is what I want to do. And especially being from kind of like a small town in Alabama, it's a real opportunity to actually get out and see the world and go to places, you never would have thought you'd go to. And so for me, it was more of like the adventure and the travel aspect. And, it's such a huge world out there. I kind of wanted to see some of it.
Well, an adventure you definitely got to have, didn't you?
Yeah. And it's funny because I joined in between my junior and senior year of high school. So I joined in July of 2001. So started my senior year in August 2001. And then, yeah, 2 or 3 weeks into my senior year was when 9/11 happened. So, I think it just it changed a lot of my trajectory in life and where I wound up going and the things I wound up doing. Because, who knows what would have happened if I'd have done 4 years of peacetime military. Maybe I would have wound up back in Alabama or what, I don't know. But yeah, it's kind of funny how little things like that happen and then changes changes your life in a huge way.
So how small of a town or how big of a town did you grow up in?
So it was small. I think we had like 35,000 people, and our graduating class was, I think, 90 kids.
Wow, that is small. So you pretty much got to know everybody in your graduating class.
Right, right. And it was, growing up, everybody then knew my parents. So anytime I did something stupid, they knew about it before I got home. And so, there wasn't getting away, wasn't a lot of getting away with much, in the little town where I grew up. But
Which explains why you wanted to get far, far away.
yeah, yeah. I mean, there's things about it I miss, like the fall weather and the leaves changing, and obviously, college football. But I kind of I like it out here quite a bit more.
Did you play sports growing up? Did you play
I
football?
did, yeah, yeah. I played pretty much everything. I mean, I played baseball since I was, I think, 3 or 4. Starting with t-ball and then in the fast pitch. I played basketball. I played soccer for a couple years, and I was like, okay, this is dumb. You kick a ball and then run as fast as you can after it, and you kick it again. But uh, played golf, and so now that's still kind of a hobby that I have. But yeah, yeah, I played a lot of sports growing up because there, wasn't a ton to do, so it was mostly just sports and outdoor stuff.
So when you were deployed to Iraq, not once, but 3 times,
Hmm.
what was that like?
Um, it was funny because it was different every single time we went. So I was there during the invasion in 2003. So we deployed in February, to Kuwait, crossed the line of departure in March. And, there was nothing there as far as, U.S. presence goes. So it was just kind of, you set up camp wherever, and then that was where, you operated out of. And then flash forward to my last deployment in 2005, and we were on Al Taqaddum Air Base, and then we did a bunch of time at Al Assad Air Base. But there was a Pizza Hut, there was a Burger King, there was Green Beans Coffee, there was a huge PX that sold whatever you wanted. So it's kind of funny to see it, I guess, evolve in a way, and how different things changed in just a few years that we were there in the build up. So it was, but yeah, it was good. I think it really makes you kind of appreciate things, like the little things. In '03, I remember there were times where, I would have killed somebody just for like a cold bottle of water, because, we had no refrigerators, we had no bags of ice. It was just, you kind of made do with what you had. And I got to the point where I stopped eating MREs altogether, because anybody that was in the military that's had an MRE, they're not the best thing ever. But after you eat them consistently, and that's all you have to eat for weeks at a time, it's like, okay, I'll just eat the crackers. Like, you get so sick of them, and you just want real food.
Well, and especially being a young man away from home for the first time, really. And then you're experiencing, being deployed 3 times, not having any home cooked meals.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was tough. What can I say? It was tough. We were eating,
Yeah,
we were not
and
eating good.
well, and what people say is when you go into the military one person and you come out very different, no matter how long you serve for. And I don't even think it matters if you were in combat or you were in non-combat times. It changes a person's way of seeing life, viewing life, doing life. Is that been your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the military itself it's its own culture. So when you're in it, and obviously it starts with boot camp. They some branches are a little more intense than others, but they kind of break you down into nothing and then build you back up into what they want you to be. And so then you're around a very I guess you'd say like kind of similar mindset group of people for the rest of your career. And, it's a very homogenous kind of society of similar people that think kind of the same way and act very, same interests. And yeah, it's its own separate society, like within the United States. And then when you get out, obviously everybody's, back in the civilian world and everybody's got their own thing going on. And, it's a lot different than what it was. I say like the Marine Corps was kind of a lifestyle. You were pretty much, you worked 24/7. There was no like off days per se. They could wake you up at 2 or 3 in the morning and say, hey, you need to go do this. And there's nothing you can do other than, okay, yeah, let's go. Some branches are a little more job-ish, I guess you'd say, where it's a 9 to 5, and then you go home and your time is your time. But the Marine Corps is definitely a lifestyle for sure.
And once a Marine, always a Marine.
Exactly. So it's always, you never say ex-Marine.
Never say ex-Marine, no. Mm-hmm. And your oath never expires either.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the truth. Well, it was kind of funny, I talked about joining in July of 2001. Well, after September 11th happened, I was in the delayed entry program for a year. So once a month, we'd go down to the recruiter's office and, we'd run 3 miles or do PT or whatever. Like these guys that were showing up that had served in Vietnam or, Desert Storm, and they were ready to join again, and they wanted to, because of what happened with 9/11, they were ready to go back into service. Unfortunately, they were in their late 40s and 50s, so they couldn't really do anything. But, it was interesting to see that, kind of like you talk about, the oath never expires, and something like that happens in our country. And then, so many people come back out of the woodworks and they're like, let's go.
So you served your time, the 4 years. And then you were out of active duty, but then you signed up to be part of the Department of Defense. So what motivated you to do that?
Yeah, so my last deployment in 2005, when I was still on active duty, I was attached to a team of EOD techs, so like the explosive ordnance guys. And whenever they found an IED or improvised explosive device in our area of operations, they called us, and me and my team would set up like a 360 security for EOD so they could run their robots and do whatever they needed to do to either, blow that thing in place or remove it and then detonate it somewhere else. And we met a bunch of civilian contractors that were out kind of doing the same thing that we were doing. And so they're talking to us, hey, when do you get out? And how much time you got left in the Marine Corps? And they were like, when you get out, come do this. Because at that time, 2005, those guys were making $225,000, $250,000 a year. And so I was thinking, okay, I can either stay in the Marine Corps and go back overseas for, who knows how long, or get out and actually go make some money. And so I kind of, took the go make some money route. And because they were hurting for people back then. And, it wasn't too hard to get a job as a contractor. So 2 months after I got out, I was back overseas, back in Iraq again, doing the civilian thing. So that was a DOD contract. I did that for a year. And then it kind of hit me. I was like, hey, I'm not in the military anymore. What am I doing? I can be at home. I could be going to school, drinking beer, just being a college kid. And so I came home to do that. Well, after 2.5 years of that, I just got bored, the kind of the civilian life and, not much excitement. And I signed up again in 2010, went back on another DOD contract for a year. And then around that time, 2011 was when they were pulling all the troops out of Iraq. And they basically just backfilled all those positions with civilian contractors or, guys like us. Sorry, I got an auto light. So they just brought us in. So if you had, prior experience overseas and the State Department was hiring. So we all kind of made the jump over to the State Department and started working for them. So I did 2.5 years on a contract with them until, unfortunately, my back gave out and I just couldn't do it anymore. I ruptured my L5S1 and I had to have surgery. And so I had to hang up the boots per se.
How old were you when you injured your back?
I think at that time I was 29.
pretty young.
Yeah.
Young fella.
Yeah.
To have to go through surgeries like that.
Yeah. Well, it's a very physical, I guess, kind of lifestyle.
So tell us how that must have felt when you realized I can't do what I wanted to do, because you obviously must have enjoyed some aspect of it because you were there for some time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the coolest thing about it was, especially on that last contract that I was on, with the State Department was, they paid really well. We were on a 3.5 month basically rotation. So you would be in country for 3.5 months, then you would get 5 weeks of vacation to go wherever you wanted. So, we kind of just traveled the world that whole 5 weeks, but you're working with all prior military guys, who were either, Army Rangers, Army Infantry, Marines, SEALs, what Air Force PJs, like you name it. But it was a very common kind of mindset. We all got along. We all went to the gym together. We'd all go for runs together. We'd go out to the ranges and, shoot guns. And it was just it was almost kind of like a brotherhood, I guess, in a way. There weren't too many people that didn't fit in. So that was tough to kind of leave, because it was it was a good job. It paid well. We were in a good spot, like way up in northern Iraq. Everybody I worked with was a bunch of great guys, and but I always say, like, it was a great job, but not a good career. So it's something you do for 5-10 years, however long you want, save a whole lot of money, and then okay, now you go find something like what we do.
Yeah. And then you decided to sign up for school, use your GI Bill.
Yep. So I'd already had some classes under my belt from when I came home from that first contract in 2007. And part of when I came home was I had to do physical therapy and rehab and all this kind of stuff on my back. But luckily, I still had the GI Bill. I still had some, other income coming in. So I didn't have to work. So I'm like, all right, well, while I'm doing this rehab and all this physical therapy, let me just go ahead and finish up my degree. So I finished my associates down here in the Valley. And I had a friend that was going to Embry Riddle, and I talked to one of the instructors there, and he was actually a Marine veteran in Vietnam. And so he kind of put me on to the global security program with Embry Riddle. So I decided to do that. And once that was done, I wanted to go to Virginia or the DC area, get back into contracting, but just be in the States. So, not having to travel overseas or, kind of the intense physical stuff that I was doing before. But kind of back into that world. Fortunately, I was with my ex-wife at the time. She didn't want to move. She was from Phoenix, had never left Phoenix. So she didn't want to go anywhere. So then it was, well, okay, I got to find something here in Phoenix. And there's very, very few decent paying security jobs in Phoenix. So, so that's kind of how that went down and how I wound up in the mortgage business.
Wow. Yeah, that's definitely not a route that you would think you would have been going to, right? From
No.
Serving across seas and then having your security contracts and then going to even majoring in global security and then ending up in mortgage.
Yeah.
So was like, did you just wake up one day and say, I'm going to do mortgage? I mean, what exactly happened?
No, so I was at a mutual friend's birthday party, and I met my now branch manager, who's been in this business for almost 20 years. And so, we kind of met, we're chatting. He was asking about, what do you do for work and all this. And, at the time, so I think I had, 4 years in the Marine Corps, 3 deployments overseas. I had another 4.5 years contracting overseas, working for DOD, State Department. I've got a bachelor's degree in global security. I'm in good shape. I can do whatever PT test I need to do. And I couldn't find a job in Phoenix making more than like $34,000 a year. It was crazy. Mm-hmm. And so I was telling him this. I'm like, yeah, I don't like what I do. I don't like where I'm at. So he starts telling me about the mortgage business. We go out for lunch the next week, and he kind of explained it, and kind of the opportunity being in the mortgage business. And so, I was like, all right, let's do it. I'm on board. So it's kind of, it's a good career opposed to security, because security is 24/7. So, even when I was an assistant security director, when I was making that $34,000 a year, if somebody didn't show up for their shift at midnight, I got the phone call and I would have to either find a replacement or go cover that shift myself. So when things happen in security, like you're kind of always, on call. Whereas like in this industry, being in the mortgage industry, you can work as little or as much as you want. So it gives you a certain level of freedom that, I wasn't really used to being in the military, being, contracting overseas, that kind of stuff, because I was always told where to be, what to wear, what to take, and now it's kind of, I get to decide what I want to do.
Hi, Tom. Thanks for being on here. It's good to see you. Tom is a veteran as well, and he served our
All
country
right
as
on.
well. So I thank you both very, very, very much for fighting for our freedom right here to be able to even have this interview and being here in this beautiful country that we get to live in. So
Absolutely.
So I'm curious. So you have become the VA loan specialist in lending. Did you know much about the VA loan prior to going into the mortgage industry?
No, I had no clue. And it was funny. I bought my first house when I was contracting overseas, and it was a new build. I won't, throw the builder's name out there, but it was a new build home. It was a spec home. And obviously, I had this great income working overseas. So I'm like, cool, I want to buy a house. So when I go home, I have a home to move into. And they told me I couldn't use my VA loan because I worked out of the country, which now that I've been doing this for 5 years, I know that that's absolutely not true. And so, so my first loan was an FHA down payment assistance loan. So I was paying monthly mortgage insurance when I never should have.
Yeah.
So
and had to come up with the down payment too.
yeah, right. So it was, I was like, oh, okay, and that was the thing is I think, why I love doing what I do now, because I was that veteran at one point. I knew that there was a VA loan out there. I had no clue what it was. I just knew that there was no down payment on a VA loan. I didn't really understand all the benefits of it, but at that one point in time, I was that guy that I trusted the lender. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah. Oh, yeah. Okay. They said I can't because of this reason. So, okay, yeah, this is their job. They're the professional. I'll listen to whatever advice, that they give me. But now that I've been doing it, I'm like, oh my God, they were so wrong. But yeah.
I guess it's that hindsight is 2020. Like I should have asked around a little bit more, but you didn't know.
No.
And unfortunately, have you come across, I know as a real estate agent, I've come across other real estate agents that don't know a whole lot about the VA loan, and they're almost intimidated when they have a VA client. And some of them, I hear stories of some of them kind of discouraging their veteran from using the VA loan because of myths that were, and maybe some things in the past, maybe the VA loan wasn't so great once upon a time, but these days there's been a lot of changes. So do you see that on the lending side? Because I've had many questions, and I've been a part of VA Rep, which is where you and I met with the Veterans Association of Real Estate Professionals. That I've met other lenders that have made the comment, well, all lenders know about the VA loan. And I'm like, no, they do not. And that's why you need to come to the lunch and learns. But what has been your experience as a lender with the lending industry regarding the VA loan?
There's not a lot of people that specialize in it. I'm lucky enough to work with some guys that do, and that they've also made it kind of their passion and their life's work in the lending industry, and they're very good at it. But the majority out there, it's just, let's say they do 100 loans, maybe they do 2 or 3 VA. They don't, I think some lenders don't even ask the question, like, are you a veteran? Have you served the country, to even go down that road? And the shocking statistic is less than 25% of veterans in this country have actually used their VA home loan. So it's less than a quarter of veterans that are eligible to use their home loan have actually used it. And then, God, I've heard, because I do a lot of classes, obviously, you and I have done classes together. But I will get phone calls, or agents will come up to me after the class or whatever. And I've heard some of the craziest just horror stories of things that have happened on their VA loans, and they want to know, hey, what do I do here? What do I do in this situation? I mean, I did a class a couple of years ago where an agent called me and said, hey, we're like a week away from closing, and now the lender has a problem. Well, the lender never pulled the certificate of eligibility to start with, right? And you can't, you never know if you're eligible for a VA loan until you have that certificate of eligibility. Come to find out, long story short, he didn't have his DD-214. They couldn't find his eligibility. They finally got it. He did 2 months in boot camp and was discharged for a pre-existing injury. He never had eligibility, but that lender took him all the way down the road, to basically close on a VA loan, and all of a sudden, oops. So it's, and even some of the big, the big boys, the insurance companies that spend millions and millions of dollars a year in advertising. I've talked to some of their LOs before as a, wink, wink customer, and they tell me some stuff that I'm like, oh, goodness gracious, and you're putting it out there to America, all over the place. Tom, I'm in a bunch of different states. Actually, I can let you know if you want to send a message.
Are you in, I guess, are you in the majority of the states? Or are there?
So I'm in, I think 10. I let a couple lapse after this year, or after last year, but I'm in like California, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Florida, Alabama, Wisconsin, Indiana. Yeah, I think there's a couple others, but yeah, I don't remember off the top of my head. There's a few. But I mean, I can do it anywhere. I can get, licensed to originate really anywhere if I need to.
Right. Well, and you belong to a great, he's in Wisconsin. Tom is in Wisconsin.
Got you covered.
Awesome. Yeah, Tom, just definitely get in contact with Chris. He truly knows and understands the VA loan. Not only that, but he obviously has a real strong passion to help veterans get the housing. So with that, on the topic of, people not knowing and veterans not knowing. So when you come out of the military and you go through, I believe it's called TAPS, right? Now, do they tell you that you have the VA loan benefit?
Yeah, so they do. Like when I got out, I can't remember exactly if it was 2 days or 3 days, but it's a couple-day course where they kind of explain your benefits now that you're getting out, such as, go to the VA and register for healthcare, and make a copy of all your medical records to give to the VA and that kind of stuff. And they do kind of touch on the VA home loan, but in my case, and I'm sure the same in everybody else's case, we were like this the whole time. Like, okay, yeah, what'd you say? Yeah, okay. So you don't pay attention because you're so ready to get out and you're done. You did your 4 years and you're like, I'm so excited to move to the next chapter. And it's like, okay, whatever. And then, a couple of years down the road, when you're trying to buy a house, it's like, wait a minute, what were they saying in TAF's class about VA? And then, and the problem is there's a lot of veterans forums out on Facebook, and you'll have a veteran ask a question like, hey guys, I'm thinking about using my VA loan. Where do I start? Who do I need to talk to? This and that. And I mean, some of the answers, as a veteran myself, I'm like, what in the world? Where'd you guys come up with this? Or someone will say, hey, use Navy Fed. They're great. And then somebody else is like, Navy Fed's the worst. I hate them. So yeah, it's big lack of knowledge out there in the veteran world for sure.
Yeah. So Tom says he'd love to have you on his live stream. You should take him up on that.
Absolutely.
Tom is a master live streamer, and he's such a great guy. So absolutely, you guys, I'll be sure to definitely get you guys in touch with one another.
Perfect.
For that. So, and that is interesting that you say, yeah, they mention it, but you're kind of so anxious, you're not listening to it anyway. But when you get out, so a veteran has 5 benefits that you are eligible for. Every single veteran gets to have compensation, pension, disability, education. And I think those 4, most veterans know about really well, because there's a lot of VSOs that really help service those 4, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So the VA home loan guarantee is the one that not very many veterans know about, which is part of why I became a member and started serving for VA Rep, is because it is the only nonprofit organization dedicated to increasing that knowledge among real estate professionals and letting veterans know what the benefits are out there, and batting at Capitol Hill, because the changes have to be made on the Hill. And so you being a member of VA Rep, really also, I believe, because it's a great organization, really helps you as well, your credibility. You not only say that you do VA loans and that you're a VA specialist, but you actually come to the classes, because that's another thing that I'll come across clients that'll tell me, oh, my lender says that they know how to do a VA loan, they've done several, and then when you kind of do some research, they haven't necessarily gotten any education on it, and they don't necessarily attend because I don't know what it is about, and I'll say our industry, between the real estate sales agents and the lenders, that for some reason we become very resistant to wanting to take extra classes. And if it doesn't offer a CE credit, I'm not showing up. So instead of having that drive to want to just know more so you can do better for your clients, we don't always see lenders and agents show up to these types of courses, because they're not always CE related, right? You don't always get a CE format. But those that really come in, and like you don't even just come to the lunch and learns, you also participate. And so what else sets you apart from other lenders?
Well, it's kind of funny what you were just talking about was, how people kind of get resistant to, just expanding their own knowledge base or furthering their own education. I feel like people could kind of get in these little ruts. And I met an agent recently that was with Berkshire Hathaway, and I was like, hey, let me come, because every agent I meet, I'm like, hey, let me come do a class for your brokerage, like free. I'll pay the lunch, bagels, coffee, whatever you guys want, whether it's breakfast, lunch. I'll come do the class for free. Let me just come educate you guys on some updates on the VA home loan. And so I got put in touch with a managing broker, right? So that's, if you're unfamiliar with the real estate world, that's kind of a big deal. Being the managing broker, you're in charge of a lot of other agents. And I was like, hey, let me come do a class for you guys, like free VA home loan class. And the response I got was, well, we don't deal very much with VA because of the $850,000 loan limit. Okay, first of all, the conventional conforming loan limit is $726,200, and the VA has no loan limits. So where in the world did you get this freaking number? And so in my mind, I'm like, this is exactly why you need education. If you're the boss of all these other agents and you don't even know, so needless to say, I never heard back, when I educated, and I was respectful, I was nice about it, but, I never heard back because it's also it's a very, I think, egotistical kind of business. It's all about the hustle and the grind, and what can you do for me? And that's why if there's no CE credits, people don't come or show up. Whereas I feel like, obviously people like you and Chris, you guys have a heart for it, and whether it costs money or doesn't cost money, or you get CE or you don't get CE, like, you're still going to show up and participate and be a part of it. But yeah, so it's definitely, it's tough in that aspect for me sometimes, because I always tell, like, if you use me, if you don't use me, I don't care. But let's make sure we're taking care of the veteran, right? Granted, I would want you to use me because we're very good at what we do. And, I kind of know my stuff. But, if you're on a transaction with another lender and it's the buyer's brother-in-law that's the lender, and so they can't really break that bond, then call me if you have questions, if something doesn't sound right. Like, I always think of me as a resource. And so, for me, I don't really have that kind of, I guess, ego about it, because I just, want to make sure the veteran's taken care of.
Well, I think part of that too is your background. I mean, you have told us about, your background of why you went into the Marine, what it was like to be a Marine, and what you did even after you came through basically unforeseen circumstances. Like, you didn't know you were going to have a back injury that was going to take you out physically to not be able to do those things that you love to do. And then you had to kind of pivot and figure things out again. And so your resiliency is what I admire in many veterans, because once, my observation has been that once a veteran has been able to come out and adapt, and you talked about that transitional period being very tough. And I've seen that for many, and have heard stories of how tough that transition of going from military life into civilian life. Now, what do I do? And like you said, that camaraderie was so tight. You had brothers and sisters in there that would have done anything for you, no matter what your political background was, no matter how you grew up, no matter your cultural differences. None of that mattered. Skin color, none of that mattered. When you guys were out there on a mission together, you were willing to lay your life down for one another at all cost.
Right.
And so veterans coming into the civilian world, not all of us civilians work on those types of moral compass or ethics, or even having that mindset. Let's just put it that way. It's just not a mindset we have. And especially in the industries that you and I are in, we don't have that mindset, because it's all about, I have to win. It's so competitive that we forget about the brother and sister, that even though we're in the same profession, well, what about them? How do we elevate them? How do we put them, ahead? And how do we make sure they succeed? Because if they succeed, we succeed. Right. And when you're on a mission.
Right. And there was, even, it kind of reminds me of what you're talking about earlier with, the 5 different benefits or whatever, and the home loan being one of them. There are literally companies out there that will target veterans to take advantage of veterans in the VA home loan aspect. And I can't think of the name of the company off the top of my head, but I shared it on Facebook a few weeks ago. The CFPB literally shut down a mortgage company and said, you are no longer allowed to do mortgages, because they were targeting veterans directly. And they were taking like the seal of the VA, putting it on their letters, sending it out to all these veterans as if they were the VA, and trying to get veterans to do loans or refinances with them. But they were posing as a government agency, and they weren't. So, you can get, first of all, you can get in big time trouble for that and pay a lot of hefty fines, but they literally were shut down and like, you're done, like you're out of here. Which is good, because we need more of that, right? We need like some of these kind of, I guess, seedy characters out of the business.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Simplify. But it's, it's just wild out there. And the funny thing is people will call me, hey, I'm so-and-so with this company, I want to do your refi on your VA. I'm like, okay, yeah, tell me about it. Well, you can take up to 80% of your home's equity out. I'm like, okay, who do you work for? Oh, I just connect veterans with this bank. What bank is it? Oh, I don't know. I'm like, okay, well, you can't take 80. You can take up to 100% out. So what you're calling every single veteran in America and telling them is freaking wrong. So you should get out of this business and go do something else, So it's kind of interesting when I get those calls, or I get those same letters in the mail, the solicitation advertising of trying to get me to refinance my VA loan with them. And yeah, it's wild in the streets.
It is wild on the streets. And I'm glad, Tom, that you mentioned Semper Fi, always faithful, is the model. And that is true. And I know all the branches, you guys like to give each other a lot of a hard time in every aspect. But I know the VP of VA Rep, the Prescott chapter, he always talks about how, definitely Marines do it better. If you want it done, ask a Marine. And it's true, because he's always faithful as well. And every Marine I have pretty much come across, if you give them an assignment or you ask them to do something, it's going to get done.
Yeah. It might not be pretty, but and stuff might get broke along the way, but it'll get done.
It'll get done. So I really appreciate you really getting into that nitty gritty of all of the challenges that you come across regarding the VA loan. And I'm glad that you had mentioned that the cap, is no longer in place with the VA loan, because a lot of people don't know that. What is the highest VA loan amount to date right now that you know of?
So I work for Benchmark Mortgage, and I know we did one in 2020 that I think was 2.8 million. I've heard that there was like a 3.1 million out there. But yeah, as long as we can show that that veteran can qualify for the payment on the home, they can, they have full entitlement. They can do that with no money down. My personal biggest one to date has been 1.115 million new construction, no money down. They did $50,000 earnest, and that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is so awesome. And that is one of the things that VA rep, definitely helped to do was to take that guarantee cap off, because,
Yeah.
it was, why punish the veteran if they can qualify? They served our country. They sacrificed a lot. So if they can qualify, why not allow them to use that benefit,
Yeah.
to gain their home? And I love that that a veteran can do that, because I've heard also other lenders, they haven't necessarily bought into that the VA loan is always the best loan for every veteran. And although there may be a few cases, but do you find that the majority of people truly do benefit better using the VA loan?
Oh, absolutely. Because especially like in an environment where we're in right now, where rates have gone up, we're kind of seeing a little bit of improvement after the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, because we might now see the Fed kind of sit on their heels and figure out what their next move is. But as a veteran using their VA loan, if you buy right now, and let's say you're at a 6.25% interest rate, like you always have access to the VA IRRL, which is the interest rate reduction refinance loan. So IRRRL. And it's the easiest loan out there for any lender to do. And it's, no appraisal requirement, no income verification, no asset, we don't need any bank statements. It's like a 2-week, we're literally just dropping the interest rate. So, if you got a VA loan and you bought and you got a 6.25, and then all of a sudden now we're in an environment where rates are at 5.5 or 5, 2 weeks, boom. Basically, we're just telling title, hey, we're lowering the interest rate, and then now you're done. Whereas conventional, we're still going to have to get pay stubs, and we're going to have to get an appraisal, and all this kind of stuff. So there's no monthly mortgage insurance ever on a VA loan. There's no down payment required on a VA loan. And one of the good things too is the VA will try to protect that veteran should something happen. So, if you're in a situation where like a spouse loses their job, or, gets ill, and then you're spending all this money on medical bills, you can actually call the VA and say, hey, VA, I'm having issues because of X problem. I don't know if I can make my mortgage payment. The VA will then work with you, and they will then tell the lender, hey, lender, here's the payment that you're going to accept for the next 6 months while this veteran gets back on their feet. The VA will work with that veteran to protect them and keep them in the home. Whereas, kind of like the big crash of 2008, it was like, get out, here's your 90-day notice, you're evicted. There's so many benefits to the VA loan.
Well, and also another one, I believe the VA loan is the only loan that you can assume, correct?
So I would have to double check. I think FHA is assumable.
Okay.
I think, I'm not 100% sure. I do basically conventional in VA. I've done FHA, but it's not kind of really my forte. I know the VA guidelines very well, but FHA, not 100% sure. But yeah, you can assume a VA loan, and it doesn't have to be veteran to veteran. It can be a civilian coming in and assuming a VA loan from a veteran.
Which is a beautiful thing, because right now I just had a friend tell me that he had a client that they were looking at a house, and it was an inherited, but it was a VA loan. And so the agent was savvy enough and understood enough to ask, it's a VA loan, so we can assume the loan. Well, can you tell me what the terms are and what the payments are? And that interest rate was at, I believe, 2.8 something.
Nice.
And they were able to just come in and basically work out a deal to assume this loan. And in this market, wowzers.
Yeah, that is huge. Sorry about the stupid light.
You're supposed to be dancing around when you do this.
Yeah, I'm supposed to be moving some more. I'm usually not this still when I'm sitting in my office. I'm always doing something. And typically when I'm on the phone, I'm walking around. And it's also WESSON.
Oh,
so like Smith and Wessen.
Got it. Okay, let me change that.
Yeah, I'd say change that. But yeah, yeah, I'm typically always walking around, especially when I'm on the phone and I don't have an issue, which I don't. Yeah,
There it
there's
is. Okay.
that's it.
Yeah. So those of you that want to get a hold of Chris, there it is. I'm also going to put it into the let me put it in my chat as well. So hey, bear with me here. Um, anything else, Chris, that you would like to leave us with? Any tidbits? Any just anything that's on your mind?
Um, just always, I'm always here to help. Like I said, to be a resource. If I can't see who's on the call or how many people, but if you ever want VA information or a class like one-on-one or for the whole brokerage, like I don't mind. I love it. It's I've got so many PowerPoints. It's crazy on so many different topics. But yeah, I think it's very misunderstood, and I think kind of the reason it's misunderstood is it's passed down from generation of agent to generation of agent, where maybe 30 years ago, yeah, maybe it was not a great product, but now it's phenomenal, and they're always working to improve it and make it better. Like the VA and Congress are consistently working to make the VA loan better for the veterans, so they get a fair shake out there in the housing market when they're trying to submit an offer. But I'll see agents that have been doing it for 30 years, and then they tell the agent under them it sucks, and then they tell the agent it sucks, and then it's kind of, there's this funny story about how the Marine Corps was created, and so they put a monkey in a cage, and they would put a banana in the cage, and every time that monkey went for that banana, they would shock it, right? So that monkey so it knew not to go after the banana. Well, then they put another monkey in the cage, and when the second monkey went for the banana, monkey one stopped him, right? And then they pulled monkey one out. So then when they put monkey three in, monkey two stops monkey three from going after the banana. They don't know why, right? That's just the way it's always been. And that's the problem, is like you get that kind of passed down generation to generation of, well, no, we don't like VA. Well, no, we don't like VA. Well, it's okay. Well, somebody needs to be like, well, why don't we? Like, why don't we accept VA offers? So yeah, it's a lot of bad stereotypes and that kind of stuff out there. And I think if we can educate more people, more veterans, more realtors, and if lenders got, kind of better educated on it, just it'd be a win-win for all active duty and veterans.
It's great. So maybe one more thing. I know that a lot of people, the top question is what's going on in the market? Where are the interest rates at? And what are we looking at right now?
Gotcha. Well, it was funny. I was talking to I was at a business breakfast this morning. I was talking to a realtor, and he's like, yeah, this is going to happen down the road. Right. And I'm like, I'm not saying anything, we think, maybe, we hope, we predict, but in this market right now, it is so volatile. We have no idea what's going to happen. Kind of the problem with the Fed and what's been going on is they've been rear looking. So for March, they'll look at February's data, February, they're looking at January's data. And they were kind of making their, rate hikes based off, rear looking data. Well, with the Silicon Valley Bank collapse, right before that happened, there was kind of a consensus in the market that, okay, the Fed is going to hike, it's going to be a 50 basis point rate hike, and then 2 more 25 basis point rate hikes after that in the subsequent meetings. Once Silicon Valley collapsed, then it went to, okay, now we're projecting like a 1/4 point rate hike, and then the Fed's going to kind of sit on their hands and not really do anything. And I think that might be what happens. We got that 1/4 point rate hike, and we'll see what happens at the next Fed meeting. But it's it's had a little bit of an improvement as far as conventional rates go. We haven't seen a big improvement on VA, and part of that is because veterans have the streamlined VA IRRRL. So all these investors know that are buying these loans that as soon as those rates come down, those veterans are just going to flip. They're going to refi. They're not going to hold that note long enough to really make any money on it. So they want to make money now while they can. So when the veteran closes, they pay a point and a half to actually make some money on that, because they're going to lose it maybe within 12 months. But I mean, there's a lot of conjecture and speculation on what's going to happen. I think maybe towards the end of the year, maybe we start to see maybe a little bit of improvement. It's just so hard to say. It's one day something good happens, and then the next day news comes out of Europe that Germany just got their inflation report and it was back up, and so then that has effect on U.S. markets, and it's wild. And then you look at obviously global politics and what's going on with Xi Jinping meeting with Putin, and now China and Russia are talking. If something kicks off there, that could have a terrible effect on the market. So it's just, I mean, there's so much out there that who knows. Everybody's hoping, right, for something to happen and rates to come down, but it's such a.
It does seem like we are living in unpredictable times, and because it's not been a market like we've ever seen. I know a lot of people keep referring back to 2008, but it's nothing even close to 2008. This is so different, and that's why the experts are all over the place. So even the experts are having a hard time agreeing what's going to happen. And unfortunately, our news media seem to like to just sensationalize whatever it is. But
right.
So with that, not knowing and where the interest rates are, what would your advice be to a buyer who is hesitant to buying right now?
So, and again, being kind of the Marine veteran and all this kind of stuff, I'm not a salesman. I just happen to work in a job where I do sales. So I'm not trying to push anybody to anything, but I still think it's a good time to buy because, inventory's not where we want it to be, right? Inventory is still a little bit low, and we have temporary rate buy downs. So you can get a seller credit and you can do, let's say, a 2-1 buy down where the first year your interest rate is 2% lower. So instead of a 6.25, you're at 4.25. Year 2, it goes to 5.25. Year 3, it goes to 6.25. But within a year and a half, if rates come down, you just refinance. You never actually see that 6.25. And we have like a 1-1 buy down where you can get 1% lower for 2 years. So if it's literally just rate that's got you sitting on the sideline, then we kind of have some programs to help out with that, because so many people are sitting on the sidelines right now and they're waiting on the rates to come down. But when that happens, there's just going to be a flood of buyers back in the market, and then we're going to go right back into bidding wars and multiple offers, and you're putting in 5 offers before you get anything accepted. So I think it's a good time, but you obviously you got to do what works for you. And if you can't afford it, you want to wait and see what shakes out, then good on you. But if you're waiting for rates to come down, I'm just telling you that everybody else is doing the exact same thing.
Well said, my friend. Well said. And would you also agree that purchasing a home right now with inflation going up and even the unpredictability of where the interest rates are going to be, does purchasing a home help hedge you against inflation for the long run?
Yeah. And, I saw the Keeping Current Matters study just the other day that, a lot of experts out there are predicting when you average it all out, like a 0.7% drop in home values. But that's, kind of 2023 into 24, home values start to come back up. So, in the next 5 years, you could pull in another $50,000, $55,000 in equity. Absolutely. I mean, real estate is always a smart investment. Again, I don't think we're ever going to have that kind of crash like we had in 2008, because we had way more supply than we had buyers. So homes weren't really worth anything. Whereas now, inventory is kind of low. Buyers, we got a lot of people that want to buy. And right now in this country, the average loan to value is like 50%. So that's just, if you have a $250,000 loan, your home's probably worth $500,000. So people are not going to walk away from that. Whereas if you have a $500,000 loan and your home is worth $250,000, people were just leaving the keys on the table and they were like, I'm out. So don't believe all the hype in the news media. And just because Goldman Sachs says something dumb doesn't mean it's true.
That's great advice, Chris. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah.
And we also we also seen the rental prices increase significantly.
Correct. Yeah.
In this time, and I don't see that coming down. So if you can lock in with a home right now where you're owning it, you at least have a steady, you know what you're going to pay for the next few years. I mean, there's obviously some changes that can happen, property taxes, that sort of thing, but it's not going to be anything near, depending on, the rental market analysis, and when the landlords, start to reassess, and then they, charge you market rate.
Right.
And
Right.
that always seems to be higher than what you can most of the time. I shouldn't say always. It seems like most of the time you do better purchasing a house than paying rent.
Yeah, absolutely. And you made a good point that landlord can do whatever they want. They can say, hey, guess what? This year your rent's going up $500. Oh, well, I can't. Well, get out. Whereas you buy a house right now and your payment is whatever it is, there's a good chance your payment could come down. If we get into an environment where rates start to come back down with low fives, maybe in mid fours, you can refinance your home as many times as you want. So you can drop it 0.5% and then another 0.5%, so, if having a home is always smart, because your payment's pretty much always going to be the same unless you refinance.
Well, thank you for that. One more last question here, because people want to know, with the VA loan, does it have to be a primary residence, or can you purchase a second home with it? Or if you can do a second home, how do you do that?
Gotcha. So it has to be for a primary residence. You can't use it to buy a second home or an investment property. However, you can buy it as your primary home and, say 12 months down the road, keep it and then use it as an investment property to then go buy another primary. And depending on where you buy and what the cost of the home is and the loan amount, all that kind of stuff, you could potentially use your VA loan again, using your remaining entitlement or bonus entitlement to, use it more than once. So you can start with a VA loan and buy a home as your primary, and then down the road, turn it into an investment property and then keep it and have, possibly multiple VA loans at the same time.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedule, Chris. Really appreciate you being on here today, educating all of us and telling us about your background. And we appreciate your service to our country. We appreciate your service to our community, to our state. And I know you are continuing to serve our country. So that has not ended. It's just you're doing it in a different way. And we so appreciate it. So you guys, absolutely make sure you get a hold of Chris if you have any loan needs. If you're out there in the market purchasing, he is an incredible guy. He does a great job. He is always honest and fair. I've known Chris for a while now, and he is very genuine. And I know Chris probably didn't want me saying this, but ladies, he's also single. So
great.
No, help you out, my friend.
No, I can't see anyone to watch this.
All right. So, well, we will say goodbye for now, but I'd love to have you back on another time, Chris. And so we will chat a little bit later. Okay.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me.
You are welcome. All right, guys. Thank you so much for being on here, and stay tuned. Tomorrow we will be live tomorrow at 10:30 as well. Chris is an amazing guy. Please be sure to give him a call. And here is my outro video.